Hi friends, now we discuss emergency provisions, chapter 16. The emergency taking first from Indian polity books, Laxmicunt. Okay, so emergency provision. The emergency provisions are contained in part 18 of the Constitution, and Article 32 to 60, 360, 352 to 360. Coming from these provisions enable the central government to meet any normal situation. These provisions enable the central government to meet any abnormal situation effectively. Okay, so it is important. The rationality behind the incorporation of these provisions in the Constitution is to safeguard the sovereignty, unity, and integrity and security of the country. Okay, the democratic political system of the Constitution. During the emergency, the central government becomes all powerful and states go to control of the center. It converts the federal structure into a unitary. It converts the federal structure into a unitary one without the formal amendment of the Constitution. This kind of transformation of the political system from federal during normal times of to unitary during emergency. Okay, this kind of transformation of the political system from federal during normal times to unitary during emergency is a unique feature of the Indian Constitution. Okay. In this context, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar observed the Constituent Assembly. Okay, that all federal system, including American and American, are placed in a tight mold of the federation. No matter what the circumstances, it cannot change its form and shape. It can never be unitary. On the other hand, the Constitution of India can be both unitary as well as federal according to the requirements of time and circumstances. In normal times, it is framed to work as a federal system, but in the times of emergency, it is so designed as to make it work as though it was a unitary system of the Constitution. Unitary system. So all federal systems, including American, are important. Are in a tight mold of federalism, no matter what the circumstances. Okay. So the Constitution stipulates three types of emergencies. So it is important. So it is one is the national emergency, one is state emergency, and one is financial emergency. National, state, and financial emergency. So national emergency is Article 352 and state emergency Article 356 and it is 360. Okay, 352 to 4 increase, okay, 356 and then 460. Okay, and national emergency, okay, it is external aggression or armed rebellion. When emergency come to the war, external aggression or armed rebellion. Okay, and it is the state emergency. The emergency due to failure of constitutional machinery in the states. Okay, and popularly known as president's rule. Okay. Okay, and financial emergency due to threat to financial stability or credit of India. Okay, and the Constitution, however, the Constitution implies the expression proclamation of emergency to not an emergency of this type. Proclamation of emergency of this type. Okay, so it is come under national emergency. Okay, proclamation of emergency. Okay, national emergency. Now grounds of declaration. Okay, under 382 of the Constitution. Okay, the President can declare a national emergency when the security of India or a part of it is threatened due to war, external aggression, and armed rebellion. We discussed before. The President can declare a national emergency. Okay, and even before the actual occurrence of the war, external aggression, armed rebellion, if he is satisfied that there is an imminent danger. The president can also issue different proclaims on the ground of war, external aggression, armed rebellion, and in him imminent danger thereof. Or not, there is a proclamation already issued by him, and such proclamation in its operation. This provision was added by the 38th Amendment Act 1975. Okay, when national emergency is declared on the ground of war, external aggression, known as external emergency. On the other hand, when it is declared on the ground, it is armed rebellion. Okay, so national emergency on a war or external aggression is an external emergency, and when it is declared on the ground, it is the armed rebellion or internal emergency. A proclamation of national emergency may be applicable also to the entire country. And 42nd Amendment Act 1976 enabled the President to limit the operation of the national emergency to a specified part of India. The President to limit the operation of the national emergency to a specified part of India. Originally, the Constitution mentioned internal disturbance as a third ground for the proclamation of the national emergency, but the expression was too vague and had a wider connotation. Hence, the 44th Amendment Act of 1978 submitted the words armed rebellion or internal disturbances. Thus, it is no longer possible to declare national emergency on the grounds of the internal disturbance, as was done 1975 Congress government Indira Gandhi. So, the 44th Amendment Act 1978 substituted the words armed rebellion for internal disturbances. Thus, it is no longer possible to declare a national emergency on the grounds of internal disturbances, as was done in 1975 by the Congress government headed by the Indira Gandhi. The President, however, can proclaim a national emergency only after receiving a written recommendation from the cabinet. The President, however, can proclaim the national emergency only after receiving a written recommendation of the cabinet. This means the emergency can be declared only on the concurrence of the cabinet, and not merely on the advice of the Prime Minister. 1975, the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi advises the President to proclaim emergency without consulting her cabinet. The cabinet was informed of the proclamation after it was made fait accompli. The 44th Amendment Act 1978 introduced the safeguard eliminate any possibility of Prime Minister alone taking decision in this regard. 38th Amendment Act 1975 made the declaration of national emergency an immunity from the judicial review, but this provision was subsequently deleted by the 44th Amendment Act 1978. Further, in this Minerva Mills case 1980, the Supreme Court held that the proclamation of a national emergency can be challenged in a court on the ground of malafide or that the declared was based on wholly extraneous and irrelevant facts, or is absurd or perverse. Okay, so here 38th Amendment Act 1975 made the declaration of the national emergency in immunity from the judicial review. Okay, and here 44th Amendment Act 1975 and Minerva Mills case 1980, the Supreme Court held that held that the proclamation of the national emergency can be challenged in a court on the grounds of the malafide, or that the declaration was based on the wholly extraneous or irrelevant facts. Parliamentary approval and duration. The proclamation of the emergency must be approved by both the House of Parliament within 1 month from the date of the issue. Originally, the period allowed for the approval of the by the Parliament was two months, but was reduced by 44th Amendment Act 1978. However, the proclamation of the emergency is issued. Emergency is issued at the time when the Lok Sabha has been dissolved, or the dissolution of the Lok Sabha takes place during the period of the 1 month without approving the proclamation. Then the proclamation survives the 30 days until 30 days for the first reading of the Lok Sabha. After its reconstitution, provided the Rajya Sabha was the meantime approved 8. Here again, parliamentary approval. The proclamation emergency approved by both the House of Parliament within 1 month from the date of the issue. Parliament was 2 months. Parliament was 2 months. Approval of the Parliament by the Parliament 2 months, but it was reduced with by the 44th Amendment Act 1978. So emergency is issued at a time when the Lok Sabha has been dissolved, or the dissolution of the Lok Sabha takes place during the period of 1 month without approving the proclamation. Then the proclamation survives until 30 days from the first sitting of the Lok Sabha after the reconstitution, provide the Rajya Sabha has meantime approved. It approved both the House of Parliament. The emergency continues for 6 months and and can be extended for an indefinite period with an approval of the Parliament for 6 months, every 6 months. This provision for a periodical parliamentary approval was also added 44th Amendment Act 1978. Before that, the emergency, once approved by the Parliament, could proclaim in operation as long as the executive desired. However, if the dissolution of the Lok Sabha takes place during a period of 6 months without approving the further continuance of the emergency, then the proclamation of 30 days, the first sitting of the Lok Sabha after the resolution proclaimed, provided that the Rajya Sabha has its meantime approved by its constitution. Every resolution approving the proclamation of emergency or its continuance approved by the Cabinet must be passed by either the House of the Parliament or by special majority. That is the majority of the total members of the House and a majority of not less than 2/3 of the members of that House of present or voting. This special majority to provisions was introduced 44th Amendment Act 1978. Previously, such resolution could be passed by a simple majority of the Parliament. So here, every resolution approved and proclamation approving the proclamation of emergency passed by either by House of the House by special majority. That is the majority of the total number of members of that House. Okay, and then two-thirds of the members of that House present and voting. The special majority provision was introduced by 44th Amendment Act 1978. Previously, such resolution could be passed by a simple majority of the Parliament. Revocation of proclamation. A proclamation of emergency may be revoked by the President. A proclamation of emergency may be revoked by the President or any time by subsequent proclamation. Such a proclamation does not require the parliamentary approval. Further, the President must revoke the proclamation if the Lok Sabha passes a resolution approving its continuation. Okay. So further, the President must revoke the Parliament revoke a proclamation if the Lok Sabha passes a resolution disapproving its continuance. This safeguard was introduced in the 44th Amendment Act 1978. Before the amendment, a proclamation could be revoked by the President on its own, and the Lok Sabha has no control in this regard. The 44th Amendment Act 1978 also provided that they were one-tenth of the member or the total number of the members of the Lok Sabha give a written notice to the Speaker. A special sitting of the House should be held within 14 days, and for the purpose of considering a resolution disapproving the continuation of the proclamation. So, for the 44th Amendment Act 1978 provided that where that one-tenth of the members of the Lok Sabha give the written notice to the Speaker, a special sitting of the House shall be held in 14 days for the purpose of considering a resolution disapproving the continuation of the proclamation. A resolution of disapproval is different from the resolution approving the continuance of the proclamation, following two respects. The first one is required to be passed by the Lok Sabha only, while the second one is to be passed by both the House of Parliament. The first one to be adopted by a single majority only, while the second one needs to be adopted by a special majority. Effects of the national emergency. A proclamation of the emergency has drastic and wide-ranging effects on the political system. These consequences can be grouped into three categories. So, firstly, here you can see the following resolution, two following respects. Okay, the resolution are disapproved and approved two respects. Okay, in the one required to be the passed of the Lok Sabha only, and the second to be need to be the passed both the House of Parliament. First one to be adopted by a simple majority only, and second one needs to be adopted special majority only. So here the proclamation, you can see proclamation. Here the proclamation of emergency has drastic and wide-ranging effects on the political system. These consequences can be grouped into three categories. First is effect on inter-state relation, and second is effects on the life of the Lok Sabha and State Assembly, effects on the fundamental rights. So effects on the center-state relations. Now what happened? What now behind it? Okay, it's too long. You can see. So here such a long chapter. You can see. Okay. Now continuing it. So now we come to center-state relation. Okay. Effects of center-state relation. While the proclamation of the emergency is in force, the normal fabric of the center-state relation undergoes basic change. This can be studied under the three heads, namely executive, legislative, and financial. Executive. During the national emergency, the executive powers of the center extend direction, directing any state regarding the manner in which its executive power to be exercised. During national emergency, the executive powers of the center extends to the directing any state regarding the manner in which the executive power is to be exercised. In normal time, the center can give executive directions or to a state only. On certain specified matters. However, during a national emergency, the center becomes entitled to give executive direction. Center becomes entitled to give executive direction or to a state on any matter. Thus, the state government are brought under the complete control of the center. Legislative. During a national emergency, the president becomes empowered to make laws on any subject mentioned in the state list. During national emergency, the president becomes empowered to make law on any subject mentioned in the state list. Although the legislative power of the state legislative power of a state legislature is not suspended, it becomes subjected to the overriding power. or the Parliament. Thus, the normal distribution of the legislative power between central and state is suspended, though the state legislature are not suspended. In brief, the constitution becomes unitary rather than federal. The laws made by the parliament on the subjects and the state subjects on the state subject, the national emergency became inoperative 6 months after the emergency has ceased to operate. Notably, while a proclamation of the national emergency is in operation, the president can issue ordinance. Proclamation of national emergency is operation. The president can issue ordinance on the state subjects also if the parliament is not in session. Further, the parliament can confer and impose duties upon the center or its offers the authorities in respect of matters outside the union list. In order to carry out the laws made by it under its extended jurisdiction as a result of the proclamation of a national emergency. 42nd Amendment Act 1976 provided two consequences mentioned above. Executive and legislative extends not only the states where the emergency is to operation, but also to any other states. While proclamation of the national emergency is in operation, the president can modify the constitutional distribution revenue between the center and state. This means that presidents can either reduce or cancel the transfer of finances from the center to the state. Such modification can be continued till the end of the financial year in which emergency ceases to operate. Also, every such order of the president has to be laid away for both the House of Parliament, effects on the life of the Lok Sabha and the state legislative state assembly. So now discuss it again next time. I think it will be help to you for better understanding. So thank you, friends.